Hello viewers, before we continue with this amazing story, we will like you to be part of our family. Subscribe today and turn on the notification bell, watch to the end and don't forget to tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get back to the story. I don't understand, Moyo whispered, her voice shaking. What are you asking me to do? Teyo's gaze softened just a little, but there was still something cold in his eyes. I'm not asking you to do anything yet. But I'm asking you to make a choice, Moyo. I've given you a glimpse of what could be. But if you want to walk away, you can. But if you do, just know that you'll never be able to come back to this life. Not without consequences. Moyo's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea what he meant by consequences, but she was beginning to feel the weight of the warning in his words. She stood up suddenly, her head spinning. I need to go, she said quickly, her voice sharp. She turned to leave, but Teyo didn't stop her. As she reached the door, she heard him call after her. I'm not threatening you, Moyo. I'm just giving you the truth. You're in this now. The finality of his words hung in the air like a thick fog, and Moyo's chest tightened. She wasn't sure what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had just changed forever. As Moyo stepped out into the night, the chill in the air felt like it was closing in on her. She had crossed a line, and she didn't know how far she could go before she lost herself completely. What was Teyo really involved in? And what would happen if she tried to walk away now? The night air was thick with tension as Moyo walked back home. Her mind raced, replaying every word Teyo had said to her. You're in this now. The phrase echoed in her head like a drumbeat, reminding her that she was no longer in control. Her heart pounded in her chest, her thoughts clouded by confusion and fear. As she reached her small apartment, Moyo felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. She stood in the doorway for a moment, staring blankly into the dimly lit room. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to feel something, anything, but the silence around her was suffocating. Inside, she found her phone buzzing on the small wooden table. It was a message from Chijioke. Chijioke, I've been trying to reach you. Please, just tell me what's going on with you and that guy. I don't trust him, Moyo. Please don't get yourself tangled up in whatever mess he's in. Moyo stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the screen. She had ignored his calls for days now, trying to distance herself from his warnings. But Chijioke cared about her, and she knew he was just trying to protect her. She took a deep breath and responded, her fingers shaking slightly as she typed. Moyo, I don't know, Chijioke. I don't know what to think. He's offering me a different life, but I don't know what that means. I'm scared. The reply came almost instantly. Chijioke, Moyo, please. I'm begging you. I know what kind of people he's connected to. You don't belong in that world. You've worked so hard to get where you are. Don't let him pull you into something that could ruin you. Moyo sat down on her bed, clutching the phone in her hands. She wanted to believe Chijioke, but the truth was, she was already too deep. She had already started to imagine a future with Teyo, one where she wasn't scraping by, struggling every day. The idea of a life with him, with all the luxury, the comfort, it was tempting. But the pictures, the threats, and his cold demeanor left her questioning whether it was all too good to be true. Just then, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Teyo. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew she shouldn't answer, but she couldn't help herself. Moyo, Teyo's voice was calm, almost too calm. I've been thinking about you. You left so suddenly tonight. Did I say something that upset you? Moyo's throat tightened. She wanted to confront him, to ask him what he was really involved in, to demand answers. But instead, she found herself biting her lip, unsure of how to respond. No, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I just needed some time to think. Teyo didn't press her. Instead, his voice softened. I understand. I don't want to rush you into anything, Moyo. But I need you to know that you're not alone in this. Whatever happens, I'll be here. We're in this together. The words felt too rehearsed, too easy. Moyo felt a chill run down her spine. Was he trying to control her? Or was he genuinely offering her support? The doubt gnawed at her, but she didn't say anything. She couldn't. Teo, she started, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm scared. There was a brief silence on the other end before Teo spoke again, his tone steady, almost reassuring. I know you're scared, but that's part of the process, Moyo. You have to trust me. You have to trust that I'm looking out for you. No one else will, but I will. Moyo closed her eyes, trying to process his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, to fall into his arms and let him take care of everything. But the other part of her, the part that had grown up on the streets of Lagos, the part that had learned to fend for herself, was screaming at her to run, to get away before it was too late. She took a deep breath, her mind spinning. I'll think about it, Teo. I just need some time. Take all the time you need, he replied, his voice gentle. But just remember, time is something we don't always have. The words lingered in her ears long after the call ended. She had all the time in the world, or so she thought. But now she wasn't so sure. The clock was ticking and she could feel it, each second counting down to something she couldn't control. Over the next few days, Moyo's life became a blur. She spent her shifts at the buka, trying to push the thoughts of Teo and the pictures out of her mind. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feeling that something was closing in on her. She couldn't shake the images of Teo's eyes, the coldness in his smile, and the threat of what would happen if she stepped too far into his world. One evening, as Moyo was cleaning up after a busy night, she noticed a familiar face at the counter, Chijioke. He had been coming by more often lately, offering her words of advice, a kind of support she didn't realize she needed. Tonight, he was sitting in a corner, looking concerned as he watched her wipe down the tables. Moyo, he said softly, his eyes searching hers. I'm not going to stop telling you the truth. You can't let him control you. I know you're scared, but this isn't the life you want. You don't know what you're getting yourself into. Moyo felt a wave of frustration rise inside her. She knew Chijio cared, but she was tired of hearing the same warnings. She was tired of being treated like a child. I know you're trying to protect me, Chijioke, she said, her voice tight. But I'm not a little girl anymore. I have to make my own choices. Chijioke didn't back down. I know you want more, Moyo, but not like this. There are some things in this world you can't come back from. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Moyo's chest tightened, and for a moment, she felt like she was suffocating. She couldn't ignore the fear creeping into her mind, the fear that she was already too far gone, that she had already crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I'm not asking you to understand, Chijioke, she said quietly, her voice shaking. I'm just asking you to trust me. But deep down, Moyo knew the truth. She wasn't even sure she trusted herself anymore. Moyo had never felt so lost. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into the abyss, but instead of fear, there was only an aching uncertainty. She had told Chijioke that she needed time, but now time felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Every minute she spent in Teyo's world, she felt more entangled in a web she couldn't see through. Every moment she resisted, the consequences became more real. The following morning, she tried to lose herself in the routine of the buka. It was a normal day, or at least it should have been. The sun was blazing through the small, unkempt windows, and the street outside was its usual chaotic self, full of honking cars, shouting vendors, and the murmur of everyday Lagos. But Moyo's mind wasn't on the usual noise. It was on the quiet tension that lingered in her chest. A familiar voice broke through her thoughts as she wiped down a table. It was Chijioke, standing by the counter, his arms crossed, looking at her with that familiar expression of concern. "Moyo," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. "This can't keep going on. I'm serious. You have to make a decision. You can't keep playing both sides. It's only going to end badly." Moyo felt the anger rising in her chest. She had been listening to his warnings for days, but it seemed like nothing she said could convince him that she was already deep in this. She had already made up her mind, and even though a part of her was still unsure, she didn't want to be lectured anymore. "I'm not playing both sides, Chijioke. I'm trying to figure things out," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "But you don't understand. You don't know what it's like to live my life. You don't know how hard it is to survive in this place." Chijioke shook his head, a look of frustration flashing across his face. "I know more than you think. I've been there, Moya. I've seen what that world does to people. It destroys them. You think you're in control, but you're not. You're just a pawn in someone else's game." Moyo clenched her fists, her nails biting into her palms. "I'm not a pawn. I'm not a fool." She turned away from him, trying to regain her composure. But Chijioke's voice followed her. "I just don't want to see you lose yourself. That's all I'm saying." Moyo paused for a moment, her back turned to him. His words dug into her, pulling her deeper into the conflict that was already tearing at her. She was so tired of hearing about what was good for her, tired of hearing about what she should or shouldn't do. But deep down, she knew he was only trying to protect her. As she left the buka later that day, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on her mind, she couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Teo had already made it clear that if she didn't make a choice soon, things would only get more complicated. That night, she decided to visit him again. The moment she stepped into Teo's house, the air felt different. The usual warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by something darker, colder. She could feel it in the way he watched her, as if he was waiting for something, testing her. He didn't greet her with the usual affection. Instead, he simply gestured for her to sit. "I've been waiting," Teo said, his voice flat, almost detached. "We need to talk." Moyo swallowed, her throat dry. "About what?" Teo sat down opposite her, leaning forward. There was no trace of the man who had been kind and charming just days ago. The man before her was someone else entirely. A stranger. "I've been patient," Teo began, his eyes dark. "But I need to know where you stand, Moyo. You've been avoiding me. You've been hesitant. And I can't have that. If we're going to do this, we need to do it properly." Moyo's heart raced. She wasn't ready for this conversation. She wasn't sure she was ready for anything. "Do what properly, Teo?" she asked, her voice shaky. "What are you asking of me?" He stared at her for a long moment, as if weighing his words carefully. Then he spoke slowly, deliberately. "I'm asking you to choose, Moyo. To choose me. To choose us. But I'm not asking for just your body. I need your loyalty. I need your trust." Moyo's breath hitched. Loyalty? Trust? He was asking for more than she could give. "What does that even mean?" she whispered, though the words barely left her lips. Teo didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a manila folder from the table and slid it toward her. The same one from the other night. Inside, there were more pictures. Pictures of her, yes, but now there were new ones. Pictures of Chijioke. He was in the background of some, talking to her in the buka, walking with her on the street. But there was something darker about the images. Teo had been watching everything, and now, she realized, he knew more about her than she had ever thought possible. "What is this?" Moyo gasped, looking at the photos. Teo's voice was low, cold. "I told you, Moyo. You're not in control here. Chijioke is a liability. You need to choose carefully." Her hands trembled as she stared at the images of Chijioke, her stomach churning. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the people she loved, people she had promised to protect. "What do you want from me?" she whispered, her voice shaking. Teo leaned back, his expression almost smug. "I want you to understand what you're stepping into. I want you to understand that no matter what you do, this is the life you've chosen now. And there's no turning back. If you walk away, if you even think about running, I will make sure that your world, the one you think you can return to, doesn't exist anymore. Not for you." The words hit Moyo like a slap to the face. Her head was spinning, and for the first time, she truly understood the gravity of what she had gotten herself into. She wanted to scream, to tell him she would walk away, to tell him she had enough. But the truth was, she didn't know how to. She had crossed a line, and now, she didn't know if she could go back. Moyo stood up, her legs shaky. "I need to leave." Teo didn't stop her this time. He just watched her, his expression unreadable. As Moyo stepped out of his house into the night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. The weight of his words hung over her like a dark cloud. She wasn't sure if she had a future anymore. The world she thought she could have was slipping through her fingers, and the consequences of her choices were already taking shape. She thought of Chijioke, her old friend, her last link to the world she knew. She needed to find him, to talk to him. She needed answers. But as she walked into the street, she saw something that made her freeze. Across the road, standing in the shadows, was Chijioke. Watching her. Moyo's heart pounded in her chest as she stood in the street, frozen by the sight of Chijioke across the road. He hadn't moved, just stood there in the shadows, his eyes locked on hers. Her first instinct was to run, to get away from the confrontation she knew was coming, but she couldn't. Not now. Her mind raced. Why was he here? Was he following her? Or had he somehow known she would come to this point, to this place where everything she had been avoiding was about to hit her all at once? "Chijioke," she called out, her voice unsteady, though she wasn't sure why. Was she trying to convince herself she could handle this, or was it just that she didn't know who else to turn to anymore? Chijioke stepped forward, out of the shadows, his face unreadable. He didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at her, his gaze intense, as if he could see right through her. "I was waiting for you," he said, his voice flat, almost too calm. "I knew you would come back here. I knew you wouldn't be able to resist." Moyo felt a chill run through her. Waiting for her? How did he know? She wanted to ask, but instead she stepped toward him, trying to keep her composure. "What do you want, Chijioke?" she asked, her voice sharp, though a knot had formed in her stomach. The truth was, she didn't know if she was ready for whatever answers he might have. Chijioke sighed, his expression softening just slightly. "I want you to understand what's happening, Moyo. You're not seeing the bigger picture here. Teo isn't just some guy with a lot of money. He's dangerous. And you're getting too close." Moyo felt the weight of his words, but something inside her snapped. She was tired of being told what to do, tired of the endless warnings. Teo had given her an image of a life she could never have dreamed of something better, something more. Chijioke's words felt like chains, dragging her down into the life she had always fought to escape. "You think I don't know that?" she shot back, her voice rising in frustration. "You think I don't know what's at stake? I'm not stupid, Chijioke. I know what I'm doing." Chijioke's eyes hardened, and he took a step closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Then you're more lost than I thought," he said, the words like a dagger. "You're in too deep now, Moyo. And I'm afraid it's too late to turn back. This isn't a game anymore." Moyo swallowed, the tension in her chest threatening to suffocate her. She had made the mistake of thinking she had control, of believing she could navigate this world without paying a price. But now, she could see the truth in Chijioke's eyes. She was already in too deep, and she didn't know how to get out. "What do you mean, too late?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, fear creeping into her tone. Chijioke hesitated for a moment, and then his eyes shifted, glancing over her shoulder, as if someone was approaching. Moyo turned instinctively, but saw nothing. When she looked back at him, he was shaking his head. "You're being watched, Moyo," he said, his voice urgent. "You think Teo doesn't know what's going on? He's got people everywhere. The things he's involved in. Trust me, it's not just about money and power. It's dangerous. And you're not the only one he's keeping an eye on." Moyo felt her breath catch in her throat. The weight of his words hit her like a tidal wave. She thought she had been cautious, but now she realized how little she truly knew. How far had she fallen? And how much of her life had been slipping through her fingers while she was too caught up in the allure of what Teo promised? "You don't understand," Chijioke continued, his voice barely above a whisper now. "You think you can walk away from this, but you can't. They're already watching you. They know everything. You're in their sights now, Moyo. And there's no way out." Moyo felt dizzy, her world spinning out of control. She looked at Chijioke, searching his eyes for any hint of reassurance, but there was none. The fear was written all over his face. "What do you mean, there's no way out?" she whispered, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. Before Chijioke could respond, a loud sound echoed in the distance. A car door slamming. Moyo spun around, her heart pounding in her chest. From the corner of her eye, she saw a figure approaching in the shadows. Moyo's breath caught in her throat. How long had he been there? Was he the one watching her all along? Had Chijioke known, and that's why he was here? Was this all a trap? Teo's figure grew closer, his dark eyes fixed on her with a look of quiet intensity. He didn't seem surprised to see Chijioke standing there, or to see Moyo in this position. His eyes moved from Moyo to Chijioke, and then back again, as if assessing the situation. "I see you've been having a conversation," Teo said, his voice smooth, calm, but there was something cold in his tone that sent a shiver down Moyo's spine. Chijioke didn't back down. Instead, he met Teo's gaze, his own eyes hard with defiance. "You're playing a dangerous game, Teo. She's not some pawn you can move around." Teo smiled, but it wasn't the warm, charming smile Moyo had once known. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I never said she was." Moyo stood frozen between the two men, her mind racing. The walls were closing in, and she was trapped. She could feel the tension thickening in the air, the weight of the choices she had made. But now, with Teo standing before her, she realized something far more terrifying. There was no escape. Teo took another step forward, his gaze fixed on Moyo. "You're with me now, Moyo," he said, his voice low and steady. "And there's no going back." But just as Moyo opened her mouth to respond, a loud, unexpected noise rang through the night, like a gunshot.